US President Donald Trump has threatened action against Iran and Russia if he's unable to make deals with them. In an interview with US media, Trump said he was angry when Russian President Vladimir Putin criticized Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky's leadership and credibility. He also said he has not ruled out imposing secondary tariffs on Russian oil if he feels Moscow is blocking his efforts to end the war in Ukraine. Also in the interview, he said that if Iran doesn't make a deal on its nuclear program, there will be bombing, and he threatened to impose secondary tariffs. Well, let's speak now to Heidi Jo Castro, who's been following the story for us in Washington, D.C. Heidi Jo, Trump's had strong words about Vladimir Putin then.
Indeed, he did. And these are very different than the laudatory language that we've typically heard from Trump, though he was quick to say that, yes, he is, quote, very angry with Putin. But he said that their relationship was still good. But he said that Putin knows that he is angry. And this is, of course, in response, Trump says, to Putin's criticism of President Volodymyr Zelenskyy of Ukraine on Friday, when he advocated essentially for Zelenskyy to be removed from power. But Trump said that would only make negotiations for the ceasefire in Ukraine extend even longer, and that is not what he wants. He threatened this, what he called secondary tariffs against Russian oil, which would be, he said, between 25 to 50% and could kick in within a month if there's no further movement on a ceasefire. But then Trump said that he quote, the anger dissipates quickly if Putin does the right thing. And he also said that the two will plan to speak again later this week.
OK, we'll see what happens there, Heidi. Trump's also, he's been threatening Iran, and that comes after the Iranian president earlier today rejected the idea of direct talks with Washington. Where does this leave talks between the two countries then?
It's really unclear because Trump seems to have contradicted what we heard from the president of Iran. Trump says that the two countries are talking, but then he also used very incendiary language in this interview, saying that Iran would see bombing the likes of which they have never seen before if that country's leadership doesn't agree to curbing its nuclear weapons development. And of course, as a reminder, it was Trump himself during his first term that unilaterally withdrew the United States from the Iran nuke deal. And it's been a rough couple of weeks between Iran and the U.S. as Trump has said that any attacks from the Houthis, which are an Iranian-backed militia in Yemen, Trump said he would count that as a shot fired by Iran. And that is one reason why he's justified a continuing bombardment campaign from the U.S. military against the Houthis. Again, saying that the U.S. and Iranian officials are talking contrary to what we're hearing directly from Iran.
OK. Heidi Jo Castro in Washington, thank you very much indeed. Well, Abbas Aslani is a senior research fellow at the Center for Middle East Strategic Studies, and I'm pleased to say that he joins us now from Tehran. Thank you very much for joining us. How much is a concern? How much of a concern is Iran to the US?
Well, Lucia, the recent developments in vis-a-vis Iran and the United States is part of the self-inflicted wounds that Trump himself, conducted during his first term by recklessly withdrawing from the 2015 nuclear deal. And by the shift in his relative shift in his approach, he wants to somehow fix those things. And that's, I think, important. Tehran sees the recent developments from this perspective, the threats that he has been making and the letter that he sent to Iranian Supreme Leader. Tehran sees that's part of a theatrical gesture aimed at portraying the negotiations on Iran's nuclear program entering a serious, or more importantly, final moments. So that Trump, with his approach typical of, heavy-handed tactics, wants to present Iran with a false choice: capitulate to the U.S. demands or face further aggression. But that's why Iran's reaction to his letter has been, agreement to indirect negotiations and talks in order to see that if they can find common grounds to be discussed. And by the time, I think, both sides will be trying to put pressure on the other side. And Trump seems, by the recent statements, to put pressure against Iran and creating leverage for those negotiations.
Yeah, and how much will Iran want to work with Donald Trump, and how much do you think that relationship is possible?
Well, from Tehran's perspective, they have been open to diplomatic resolution. But there's one point. Trump simultaneously, by publicly stating that he is for a diplomatic resolution with Iran, he has been publicly talking about military threats against Iran and reinstating the maximum pressure policy against the country. And in addition, we have been hearing contrasting stances from Trump himself, discussing a negotiated resolution or making threats and increasing the sanctions. And also, mixed signals coming from his administration officials. The National Security Advisor, Mike Waltz, he has been talking about complete dismantling of Iran's nuclear program. But his envoy on Middle East, Steve Witkoff, he has been talking with a more diplomatic tone. And this sends a mixed message to Tehran, and it further exacerbates the fraud situation, and it makes it more difficult for Tehran to chart a clear path forward. And that's why Iran has so far agreed to indirect negotiations in order to see that what is the true objective of the United States through those negotiations, and who has the say in these negotiations. Because one talks about, dismantling Iran's nuclear program completely. The other one talks about diplomatic solution. Tehran wants to make clear that what the United States and Trump exactly mean. And, adding salt to the injury is the past breaches by the United States toward the 2015 nuclear deal. He unilaterally withdrew from the JCPOA, Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, which also drew the criticism from its own allies in Europe. So that's why now Tehran wants to indirectly talk to the United States to see whether they are on the same page or whether a solution is possible or not. And by the statements that Trump today made about the Iran and the US are talking, I think nothing has so far started, but it's an important, I think, could be interpreted as an important green light to Iran's offer to talk indirectly.
Okay, Abbas Aslani, Senior Research Fellow at the Centre for Middle East Strategic Studies. We appreciate you bringing us the Iran perspective. Thank you.
My pleasure, Lucia.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.